I felt like the biggest failure. Like I was starting out my parenthood journey as a failure. I felt like I was letting my little girl down. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, it is so great to have you. I'm Antoinette, a New Zealander living in the beautiful wine region of Lower Franconia, Germany. So in this video today, I'm going to be swallowing my pride and sharing some super embarrassing stories about some of my earlier motherhood adventures in Germany. For those of you who don't know, I'm a mother of 3. All of my children were born and raised here in Germany. Life as a mother in Germany has become a lot easier over the years, but I was once a first-time mum in Germany and I didn't know what on earth I was doing. And oh my goodness, I have so many embarrassing stories of mistakes that I made, mostly due to cultural misunderstandings, cultural clashes, things like that. So I have so many of these stories. I'm just going to share 2 stories in this video today. Maybe some of my fellow expats, foreigners, can relate to some of my embarrassing stories, and maybe it won't make you feel so bad about some of the mistakes you've made as a first-time parent here in Germany. And to my wonderful German subscribers, you're probably going to be getting a lot of secondhand embarrassment from these stories I'm about to share. So brace yourselves. So we're going back to when I became a mother for the first time in Germany. My daughter Amelia is 12 years old now, so this is going back a long way. When I fell pregnant with Amelia, I had not been living in Germany for that long, and although I could speak a very basic level of German, I did struggle a lot with everyday conversations. I had trouble understanding what was going on. I had a lot of anxiety and embarrassment surrounding the German language, or my level of German. I'd only been living in Germany for a few years at that point, but I was so embarrassed about the fact that my German was not that great. I felt as though it should be a lot better for the amount of time I had been in Germany. Looking back now, I think I was doing just fine. So when I fell pregnant with Amelia, as I said, I didn't speak a lot of German. I spoke just a little bit. My husband, he's a native German speaker. I would drag him along to all of my gynecologist appointments just to kind of be there for support and help me out with the language and that kind of thing. He was amazing. He really helped me out. So any forms I had to fill out, he would do that for me. Looking back now, I should have tried to do it myself, but I was really emotional during my pregnancy. It was probably due to, pregnancy hormones and being a first-time pregnant mum in Germany, a foreign mum, and I don't know, I was just so much less confident back then than I am now. Fast forwarding to after our beautiful daughter was born, this was, I think, about 10 days after she was born, we had to go for her U2 checkup. So the U2 checkup for newborns in Germany typically happens 3 to 10 days after birth. This involves both a physical examination by a pediatrician and questions for parents to answer. Parents are asked about the baby's first few days, any concerns they may have, and details about the pregnancy and birth. The doctor will also examine the baby's body, including their skin, senses, organs, and musculoskeletal system. So this was a big appointment, and I was feeling really, really anxious about going, especially because my husband couldn't come with me this time. I can't even remember the reason. It was so many years ago, but I do remember having to go to this appointment with my pretty bad level of German and my postpartum anxiety. Looking back, I don't think I was suffering from depression as such, but I had a lot of anxiety. I was just feeling really emotional. Being a first-time mum in Germany, I just found it quite overwhelming and daunting. I didn't even realize how intense the appointment was going to be before going in. But anyway, I remember going to this appointment with Amelia, and she was in her little baby carrier. I used to carry her around all the time in this little baby carrier, and she was a little bit fussy, and I was a new mum just trying to get the hang of, how everything works. I just wanted to do everything right. I was breastfeeding her at the time, and it was just all of these worries going through my mind, how I was going to get through this appointment. Looking back now, these things are just so easy to me after having 3 children. It's just nothing. But anyway, I have to validate the feelings of myself at that time, and I was feeling anxious. So I remember the receptionist giving me this really long questionnaire that I had to fill out all about the baby's development and just questions, all sorts of questions about just everything from my baby's development to my mental health to just, family, medical conditions, just all sorts. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is just too much. I probably should have switched over to English at this point because I knew that I wasn't going to understand this form, but I was being super stubborn and I wanted to prove that I could handle this in German when in fact I really couldn't. And so I just remember going into the waiting room with all these other, babies and kids, and I was trying to fill out this form and I was struggling to understand it, obviously. I was trying to translate some things in the translator and it wasn't really working. I remember the receptionist saying something about a cross. So I was thinking, okay, I have to cross out something. I was not used to filling out forms because during my pregnancy, my husband did that all for me. In New Zealand, for the most part, when you're filling out one of these forms that are just like yes and no, you have to tick the right answer. So if your answer is yes, you will tick the yes. But I was a little bit thrown off with the cross thing. I didn't quite know what was going on. So I was thinking probably what I have to do here is if the answer is no, I will put a cross on that no. So that is, crossed out and then the yes is left. That made the most sense to me. And little did I know this was totally wrong. So I went through this whole questionnaire trying to juggle Amelia in the baby carrier and my cell phone trying to translate everything. It took me so long. And every answer that was no, I would just cross out. So just like cross, 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 no, no, no. I just remember the receptionist reading through and she was just kind of like, okay. And I knew straight away that I'd done something terribly wrong. At this point, she must have realized that my German was not good and she switched over to some very broken English. I hate it when that happens, but it was definitely necessary in this moment. So basically I had filled out the form completely wrong. So all of these questions about family history, and I think there were even questions about whether I was using drugs or drinking alcohol or whether I had during pregnancy, I had marked as yes, 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 yes. And hopefully, I don't know what the receptionist would have been thinking, whether she would have thought, oh my goodness, what an absolutely terrible mum, this baby needs to be taken off her, or whether she clicked, I just didn't understand. At that point, I was feeling so overwhelmed. I just burst out crying and I just said, I'm so sorry, I just didn't understand. And the receptionist was like, okay. I don't remember her being very, supportive or empathetic towards my situation. Yeah, I was very overwhelmed. I had marked all of the answers wrong and I had to fill out this form again. And I just remember somebody came and helped me out filling out the new form and I just felt so stupid because it was completely wrong. Looking back now, I really shouldn't have been embarrassed about that. I was a first-time mum. I was emotional, which is so normal. And, I was attempting to fill out a form in a foreign language. And I think I should have given myself a little bit more credit and I should have been a little bit more gentle on myself. But I felt like the biggest failure, like I was starting out my parenthood journey as a failure. That's what I felt at the time. And as I said, it was probably my postpartum hormones, telling me that I was such a loser and a failure, but I felt like I was letting my little girl down. I don't know, I just felt terrible in that moment and I just broke down crying. I just wish I could, go back in time and give myself a hug and say, everything is going to be okay. But yeah, I felt really stupid. And so since then, I have never filled out a form wrong in Germany. So when you were filling out a yes or no form in Germany, if the answer is yes, you cross that little box, which it just seemed bizarre to me at the time. It didn't make sense. I didn't understand this concept, but this is how it is in Germany. I later found out that you can also tick that box. It doesn't really matter, but most people will put a cross and that means yes. So I definitely learnt the hard way. Okay, so my last really embarrassing parenting story in Germany has to do with, once again, my daughter Amelia. Poor Amelia, oh my goodness. Thankfully, I had learnt a lot by the time my sons came along. I became a much more confident mum the second time round, and even more so the third time round. But being a first-time mum here in Germany, it's definitely not for the faint-hearted. So fast forwarding to when my daughter was 6 years old in the first grade. In Germany, kids get quite a lot of homework, even in the first grade. And my daughter Amelia would come home every day with homework, which I had to help her out with. And, at that point, my German was so much better, and it was, easy for me to help her out with this homework. There were a few misunderstandings, but for the most part, I could help her out. But I remember one day she came home from school. Kids here get home from school at around 12:15, at least here in Lower Franconia, Bavaria. And so Amelia came home from school and she had a little bit of lunch, and then we started on her homework. And this was maths homework. So she brought out this maths worksheet, and it looked like it would be really, really simple. It was very, very basic beginner maths, like 2 + 2 = 4 and 1 + 5 = 6. For this homework, Amelia was required to copy the whole equation from the worksheet to her workbook, just, I guess, to practice writing numbers and then obviously answer the maths equation. And so Amelia said to me, "Oh, this is easy. I can do this all by myself." So I left her to finish. Then I came back to check whether she had everything right. And I was really surprised. She got so many answers wrong. I was not expecting that because I thought she knew what she was doing. And I said to her, "Oh, Amelia, I know you tried really hard, but there are quite a few wrong answers here." She looked really surprised and she was like, "I got everything right. I know how to do this." And I was like, "Oh, Amelia, we need to go through this again together." Something I found really unusual was that every single equation she wrote down that had the number 7 in it was wrong, completely wrong. So she would be writing 7 + 2 = 3. And I would be thinking, that is so wrong. I didn't want to say that to her in that way. But I was thinking, how can she get 3 from 7 + 2? And it was like this pattern. She kept getting these wrong answers. She was absolutely adamant that she did not do this wrong. And I finally convinced her to, correct her mistakes, and she did it very reluctantly. So the next day she came home from school looking quite upset, and I was like, "Amelia, what's wrong?" And she said to me that her teacher told her that all of the maths equations that I had made her correct were actually wrong. I was like, "Well, they can't be right." And I looked through and I was like, "What is going on here? Something is not adding up." Then later when my husband got home, I showed him Amelia's workbook, and he looked through it and he was like, "Oh my goodness, what are you teaching her? I have no idea what's going on here." He was like, "All of your answers were wrong and Amelia's answers were right." And she was like, "See, Mama, I told you." And I was thinking, am I going crazy? So it turned out I wasn't actually going crazy. I just mixed up the German 1, because in Germany, a handwritten 1 looks like a 7. The way Amelia had written that 1 to me looked like an unusual looking 7, but it definitely looked like a 7 to me. In New Zealand, when we're writing the number 1, we just write a straight line. And in Germany, there is always a flick on the top, quite a prominent flick too. And to me, that just looked like a 7. That couldn't possibly have been a 1 in my mind. And I was trying to explain this to Amelia. I was like, "I'm so sorry, Amelia. In New Zealand, we write 1s differently." And honestly, she wasn't impressed. She was feeling kind of like confused about the whole situation. And since then, she has been really reluctant to let me help her with her homework, which is such a shame because that was such an innocent mistake. But I don't know if she thinks that I'm going to get everything wrong again. And I don't know, I'm perfectly capable of helping her with her homework. I just had to figure out some of these cultural differences, like little cultural differences. And, I can help her with her homework, but she doesn't usually let me. She'll try and do it on her own, or she'll wait till, Papa gets home to help her, which is such a shame. And it is what it is. And yeah, that's my little story. So anyway, guys, I have come to the end of this video. I really hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found it entertaining and maybe a little bit reassuring to some of my fellow expats. Just know that you're not alone and things do get better. And, if you make some of these embarrassing mistakes, it is totally normal and just part of the process. So just try and roll with it. Try not to get upset like I did. I've definitely learned from my mistakes, and it definitely makes for some some pretty funny story times. So anyway guys, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, then don't forget to give it a big thumbs up. It really helps my channel. It helps to get my videos out there and noticed. If you enjoy my content and you haven't already subscribed to my channel, I would love you to consider subscribing. That would mean so much to me. Feel free to connect with me on Instagram, and I will see you again really soon. Bye!